There's nothing like a daddy in the whole world, and the spiritual leadership and excitement they bring to family life are worth celebrating. We have a wonderful panel today, and we're talking about Dad's special gifts.
Welcome to Homeschooling Saints, the podcast that helps you create the homeschool you love for the people you love. Our host is Lisa Mladinich, a Catholic life coach, TV host, best-selling author, and an instructor at Homeschool Connections.
Before we get started, remember to subscribe to this podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you're watching on YouTube, click the bell to join our channel. Hi, I'm Lisa Mladinich, and today our guests are Mike Aquilina, Walter Crawford, and Tom Weishaar to give the daddy side of the story in our panel discussion about Dad's special gifts. Mike Aquilina is Executive Vice President of the St. Paul Center for Biblical Theology. He has written many books and hosted 11 TV series. Walter Crawford is the founder and president of Homeschool Connections and co-founder of Good Counsel Careers. He and his wife Emily are homeschooling 4 of their 6 kids in Texas. Tom Weishaar, LPC, is a pastoral counselor at Pastoral Solutions. That's at CatholicCounselors.com. He's an advisor on the Catholic 𝐾𝐻OM app, and his wife and he homeschool their 3 children. Gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Good to be here.
Yeah, it's great to see you. What a privilege it is just to be with you today to talk about that secret sauce that dads bring to homeschooling and family life. It's different for every dad and every set of circumstances. So we know there's going to be lots of other dad stories out there in our listening audience that have their own uniqueness, but it's going to be really exciting to hear your stories on this topic of Dad's special gifts. So let's go around the table and start by everyone just please telling us the age range of your children, how long you've been homeschooling, and a brief description of how you see your role in the homeschool. Mike, we'll start with you.
My oldest is 33 years old, and my youngest is 19. So I guess we've been, according to my philosophy, we've been homeschooling for 33 years. Technically, I guess if you'd say we were homeschooling for 28 years, if you wanted to count from the kindergarten age forward. We've always been relaxed homeschoolers, I guess you'd call it, leaning toward unschooling.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I'm sure lots of people listening are doing something similar. We've had some episodes on unschooling, such a beautiful, rich way to walk with our families. Walter, how about you?
Yeah, so our oldest is 21, just as of a couple of days ago, and our youngest is 5. We've been homeschooling since the beginning as well. But if you want to kind of do the math, probably first grade, right on 6. So about 16 years of homeschooling from A to Z. And the youngest one is being homeschooled, but he's kind of almost an unschooling track so far because it's just, hey, let's learn what brothers and sisters are learning, that sort of thing. So yeah, it's been a great ride. Did you want to learn about our roles too? As we see it?
I forgot to follow up on that with you, Mike. So go ahead and answer that, Walter. We'll circle back to Mike and then we'll bring Tom forward.
Mike was just afraid to answer the question. So, the hat that I feel like I wear is multi-layers. One of the biggest things, I was the one who wanted to homeschool from the onset. My wife was a teacher when we got married, but that wasn't necessarily in her vision. She did not have the kind of that wasn't really what she was thinking about because she was in Catholic. She had been a teacher in Catholic school, so it was my ambition as I and learned through my master's degree in education, adult education, that, education really isn't something that is in a box like we're typically prescribed when we think about, going to school and whatnot, and it starts at 8 a.m. and ends at 5. Rather, it's something that is, for the most part, actually continues well beyond our schooling years, if you will, outside of college and so on. So by reading books and being engaged in the learning process, teaching yourself something new each day. So that was kind of what I I wanted it to be a homeschooling situation, given that that means we could do other things. We could inspire our children to learn. And so my role is, as I see it, is to support my wife in that endeavor, to help her find new angles on how we can homeschool, but also to be that principal when necessary, to be the disciplinarian, so to intervene when necessary, when the kids are a little bit raucous or not, let's say, conforming to the lessons of the day. But the other hat that I wear, and this has been going on for the better part of a year now, I take my kids early in the morning. I go to the gym to exercise early in the morning, but mostly because my son wants to go. And so it's kind of led to a group of boys and dads get together early in the morning at the gym, and the boys play basketball or whatever, and I'll exercise. And then when at the end of my routine, I'll get in there and play basketball with them. So my 5-year-old comes with us because his brother comes. He's the youngest boy, and the middle boy is in there. He's the one who's kind of moving us forward. He's 10. And so, and we're bringing others into the fray, so to speak. My wife will be joining us now, and my daughter as well. So my 2 daughters. So that's, I could go on about the hats that I wear, but those are the 2 biggest ones that I see me wearing. And if you want to throw in a third, kind of the inspirational, the motivational leader, not only for my wife to help keep going, but also for the children to keep going.
I love the change in tone.
Yeah, same words, different tone.
Yeah, exactly. Wonderful. Thank you so much. So, Mike, sorry for skipping over that. Where do you see your role? How would you define it?
Well, I've been working from home since my son was 6 years old. So that's been kind of a luxury. I've always been around. I am the sole breadwinner in the family. So my role is to get my work done to a great extent. But one advantage of that, and one advantage being at home, is that my children were able to see my work, see me doing my work at all stages of my work, in difficulties and in triumphs and all of that stuff. So they've been around for that. They've had a chance to grow up in the business. As they get older, they've had chances to travel with me for my business because I travel a lot. So I've taken them along whenever I can. And it's given them a chance to hone some skills. My wife does the lion's share of planning and interaction with the kids. I've always been here. I've seen my role largely to model what an adult working situation would be, to bring the kids into that situation very gradually, and also to have conversations with them. Because if you're unschooling, if you're doing the relaxed thing, it's important that you have a connection with each and every one of the kids. And sometimes that's not an easy thing, because sometimes you have kids who are extremely introverted, even within a family situation. So you have to draw them out. And in order to do that, I've tried to be into whatever they're into. If they're all in on some certain author, whether I like the author or not, I'm reading the books. I never read a vampire novel in my life until my girls started reading vampire novels, and then talking to them. And their music too, because music is really important. It was important to me at that age, so that you can have the conversations, you can be involved in their lives in the things that they consider important.
I love that. I feel like that's the literary equivalent or the intellectual equivalent of Daddy. This is such a classic image. It's almost a Rockwell image. Daddy perched on a tiny chair holding a tiny teacup, right? It's that coming into their world and accompanying. And dads have that really enormously important charism that is so, disregarded in our culture, of helping bridge to the outside world for kids, helping them have a really positive relationship, have a sense of belonging in the world. That moms have a different charism. It's more, sort of intimately relational and other things, but dad plays a very special role there in being that bridge. How tenderly you describe that. It's so important to understand just the heroism of even breaking away from work to have conversations, to die to self in those moments when you work from home. All right. Thank you so much. Tom, what are you thinking about all this?
Yeah, so I have a pretty unique role in the family. I do spend a fair amount of time working myself, and I am the sole breadwinner. But when I'm with the kids, definitely the priority for us is theology. I definitely try and get into that role of priest of the family as much as possible. That I'm reading the Bible with the kids. I'm having conversations. We do Saint of the Day. And I'm really engaging them relationally in the way that Mike talked about. I love the way you talked about connecting with the kids. I think that's so important, and especially around faith. You know, if dads are out there and they're wondering, hey, I want to do something with my kids for homeschooling, what should I do? The number one thing I would absolutely encourage dads to do is to read a little scripture with them, pray a little with them, talk to them about the faith, give your kids the sense that they're the center of your life, and also that the faith is the center of your life too. And I think that's one of the absolute best things to do in homeschooling. I've done a little bit with memory work and with math with the kids, but definitely front and center is theology. And I think you could say I'm no Mike Aquilina, but I do my best. And I pray to those places. And I'll tell you,
You should thank God for that.
I'm having such a great and surreal experience that I'm totally going to share this with my wife. She's going to ask me how the podcast went, and I'm going to say I was in there with Mike Aquilina, and Mike Aquilina talked about reading out of a vampire novel, and I talked about the Bible.
Wait right here. I'm going to get my wife so she can hear this, okay? She might have something to contribute here.
It's okay with us to have Zoom bombing wives popping in. That's how we roll here. Oh my goodness! So, how many kids do you have, Tom?
Oh, and I've got a 9, a 7, and a 5. It's a boy, girl, boy.
Oh, how wonderful. And I love that you're the theology leader, that you're embracing that priesthood that's part of our life as Catholics, and especially as a father. Just one statistic that always stands out for me, and this is a secular statistic, that 28% of kids the mother only practices the faith, though they will continue to practice the faith. But if the father does, it's closer to 80%. The father's spiritual leadership is anointed by God. This is another place where fathers need to understand that even if you're not a theologian, if you're not like Mike, someone who is an expert on the early church fathers, bridging that gap, letting your children see that daddy gets down on his knees and prays, that daddy loves the word of God, however simply or in a beginner way, or by a program that takes the whole family through the faith. Do whatever you can do. That leadership is powerful. Just beautiful. Thank you so much, Tom.
Amen. Thank you.
Wow. Yeah. I love the way science catches up with God. They're starting to notice that God's ways are the best ways. All right. So let's go around the table again in the same order. We'll start with you, Mike, and just hear some examples of what, we've gotten little peeks into it, more about what that role looks like day to day. What is a typical day in your homeschool like? Or, just step us into some of the vignettes.
Well, right now we're finished in a sense, because my oldest is 19 now, or my youngest, I'm sorry. She's still at home. She was in a religious order for the discernment phase, and then discerned out. But she's back home now, and so, but we're not homeschooling her, except in the loosest sense that we'll be homeschooling all of our kids for all of their lives.
Mm-hmm.
A typical day was just a typical day for the family, because all of the kids had different approaches to learning. We found that out very early. Some of them needed more attention. Some of them wanted less attention, and they were all pursuing different ends. We never had a television in the house. In the beginning, we didn't have one, because my wife and I just couldn't afford one. We certainly couldn't afford cable. So we didn't have that screen that was demanding their time. All of the kids became avid readers. and just loved to consume books. So if you just kind of got them out of bed in the morning, they were going to be reading all day. So you'd often just walk around the house and see kids on various couches and chairs reading. That's kind of the way it went. My wife kept track of everything because that's what was required by the state of Pennsylvania during that time. Pennsylvania had a fairly restrictive homeschooling law for most of the time we were doing this. So we had to keep records of things, and we did. We kept lists of the books they read. That was the bulk of what we did. But if the kids wanted special attention for something, like my daughter, when she decided she wanted to work in publishing, she made that decision in early high school. We were able to focus her education so that I could bring her in on more of my work, so that I could have conversations with her. We could buy those books in a focused way so that she was going up an inclined plane, getting to know the skills and that sort of thing. Another one of my daughters was always very quiet, like this little mouse, all the time she was growing up, and you really had to draw her out. When I found out about what she was very interested in, I was able to cultivate that a little bit. She got really interested in the King Arthur legends. And so we started with the Howard Pyle versions from the early 20th century, which are more or less in our language. They have a stilted language, but it's deliberately stilted, to sound archaic. And we got into those, and she said she wanted to learn where those came from. I should say all this began with C.S. Lewis's Narnia stories, because she wanted to know what were the sources, what were his sources, what inspired Lewis. So we started doing the Howard Pyle, and then we went back to the originals, the medieval originals, and we started going through those. And then we read Don Quixote because he's doing a parody of those, and she just got immersed in it. And it benefited me. I mean, I learned so much about those legends and their development that I ended up writing a book about it. I wrote a book about the Grail legends. So it educated me while it was educating her, and it was something that she was passionate about. So you could kind of ride that wave forward.
Wow, I love that. I've heard that from moms so often, that they just ended up filling in gaps in their own education or getting inspired just by walking with their kids and their unique interests and all of that. So good. Thank you, Mike. What about you, Walter? What does it look like day to day?
Well, as kind of Mike pointed out, I work from home and have been for quite a while. Even before Homeschool Connections was a full-time gig for me, I worked from home because my employer permitted it. So I've been almost home exclusively for the entire time that we homeschooled when my daughter was 6 or 7. And, that the day in the life is, we start out pretty early now, in the sense that, I liken what we do in the morning in the gym as part of their education, simply because it's an athletic component, if you will. And that's not by design per se. It's just, hey, Dad's going to the gym. Can I go with him? Kind of thing. And it turned into that. And it's been very beneficial for the boys. You see kind of this focus that they tend to have in the day that didn't exist before. Not to mention the fact that it's great for them to run into their friends and have that man time, if you will. So that is that's the beginning part of our day. Then it transitions into breakfast, and then the kind of the conversations we have around the breakfast table. And most of the time we're standing up. We're not like sitting around, let's all congregate and let's have breakfast together. It's kind of it's a walking breakfast, right? Everyone's trying to get their day going. Everyone's trying to get all situated. My wife's grabbing her coffee. I'm not a big coffee drinker. She's trying to get her day going. But we'll start off with prayer in the morning. Is a typical formulaic approach, and it's not formulaic in the sense. I don't mean to sound like it's we've got to do this. No, it's an opportunity for us to kind of gather our thoughts, kind of like what we did before the podcast, where there's a prayer to kind of settle the day, right? To kind of prepare our minds, our hearts, our souls, our dispositions to what we have in front of us, and then that transitions to, let's see where we're at with each of the kids. So one kid will be, working on their math. One kid will maybe working on, literature. The two youngest are kind of in their infancy stages, if you will, with regard to their learning process. My daughter, my 7-year-old, is going through the reading process, trying to learn how to read. And my youngest, as I said, is just kind of learning from all the big kids. And that's typically how it's unfolded. The youngest always benefits because they are the ones who get a chance to feel the cascade of information fall upon them. And it's a neat to see that, because the youngest, for example, is learning a poem because his sister is memorizing it. And he is memorizing as she's memorizing, even though that's not part of the curriculum. But Mike pointed out earlier, reading. I tell the kids, look, reading is the gateway to everything. It is a starting point and really almost an end point when it comes to educating yourself, because so much can be obtained from reading. It's a remarkable tool that I think fathers need to be complete advocate for. The STEM, we're such a STEM heavy culture. At least that's my sense anyway. We got to have engineers, we got to have doctors, and they definitely have a role. Don't get me wrong. And some kids are really lean that direction. But I love the fact that reading is kind of a big part of who we are. And I can get into some more of that later on and how I advocate for it. But I get the kids to we'll have our day is very eclectic, by the way. But that is, my wife will have kind of she has an approach that she takes. And what I will typically do, and my involvement will be to help the kids, if I'm not working, with their math or with some of their reading, that sort of thing. And what we like to try and do also around the house is, Tom pointed out earlier, theology and religion. Conversations happen all the time. Sometimes we'll listen to talk radio, and that's gotten old, frankly, in the last few years. But there was a time I was a voracious talk radio guy, and I liked it because I liked the topics of the day, and it created conversation points for our kids. And that was very, very beneficial. And we still have those conversations, just not necessarily the talk radio host prompting us. But it gives us a chance to talk about the social issues and how they relate or not relate to church teaching. And that's been, those kind of prompts have been very, very helpful for us to have conversations about God, the church, and its role in the culture, and try to create analogies for them to understand that, for example, we see kids of ours or friends of ours who have kind of, they've deviated from the faith. God willing, they'll come back. But giving them the license to understand that, you're going to question your faith when you get older. You're going to have a lot of deep questions that simply are hard to answer, no matter where you turn. But you know what? If people like John Paul II and Augustine and, your major philosophy, Thomas Aquinas, if they can remain faithful, and they're geniuses, they're giants in the faith, right? And they can keep their faith, then so can I. I can trust in that doesn't mean we don't stop exploring and learning and questioning and seeking to understand, but it does mean that your questions are no different than anyone else's, and there are answers. Sometimes they're not always evident, but they will come with time and prayer. So anyway, that's a little bit of a deviation, but I just those are the things that we do in our day that. And we typically will end the day with reading. I will read to the kids. I'll find a book that's kind of appeals to all age levels, the 5-year-old and the now 13-year-old. Try to find some middle ground. And we were testing books last night, as a matter of fact. Which, do you like this one? No, I hate that one. I said, I agree. I don't like that one either. And so we settled on another book. But it's trying to get them to love learning by way of reading, and that's one of the kind of my biggest talking points when it comes to homeschooling. So,
yeah, so good. And these homeschooled kids have big ideas in their minds and in their hearts because they do so much reading, and they have beautiful vocabularies. Although a friend of mine never read to her kids, and so they pronounce all these big words wrong, but boy, do they understand them. That's really funny. Brilliant, brilliant kids. Tom, how about you? What is a day in the life for you as a homeschooling dad?
I think, Lisa, a day in the life for me is an adventure. And the first thing I want to let dads out there know is that I do a lot of my stuff over the breakfast table. So we're kind of wrapping up. It fits into my day. It fits into the kids' day. And on a good day, there's deep theological conversation. And on a bad day, there is absolute pandemonium. And there are little people dancing around with food in their hair and trying to do food art. My little guy might, be stripping off some of his clothes and dancing around and doing an Irish jig or something like that. So if you're ever having one of those moments and you're like, this is pure chaos and I just lost a handle on it, please know that it's entirely possible that over at Tom Weishaar's house, the same thing is going on. So, but it's an adventure. It's been an adventure every step of the way. As a mental health counselor, one of the things that's really impacted the way I view homeschooling is the relational side of it. And the fact that homeschooling is a chance for me to be in deep relationship with my children. And even more importantly, deep relationship with my wife and have the kids experience that on a day-to-day basis. And one thing that has struck me kind of vignette-wise is I've talked to lots of clients where they went up through the traditional high school environment. They felt like they didn't have that much of a relationship with their parents. And especially in the toughest moments in their lives, they felt like they were alone, like their parents weren't with them in that. And I'll tell you, I had recently, my oldest, he's young still, he's 9, but he started asking questions, like things started coming up about sexuality. And he started asking some really tough questions. It was like, man, I'm terrified. And I don't know exactly what to say. And this goes to show what an adventure things are, though, that it kind of sent me on this journey of like, what should I be talking to my son about at this point? And I've got the book, Beyond the Birds and the Bees by Greg Popcak, but I ended up working for Greg Popcak. So in another one of those like surreal Holy Spirit moments, I had a conversation with Greg Popcak about where my boy was at. And I said, Greg, he's such a good mentor to me. And he's really a almost kind of like a father figure. And I was like, Greg, I'll be honest with you. Like, I know a lot of content. I don't know exactly how to meet him where he's at. And Greg was able to really kind of like coach me through it. But one of the most remarkable things about homeschooling is that I thought that conversation was going to be terrifying to have and so awkward. And by the time I actually got around and had it with my son, it was so relaxed and it was so open. And he was just asking genuine questions and he was curious. And I was giving like appropriate responses for where he was at. And it was like, oh, what a beautiful fruit of homeschooling. I imagine it's possible to have those kind of moments, with the kids going to traditional school, but it sure is a lot harder. I honestly think that. And one other thing that I'm realizing too, just on the book side, is I'm hearing Mike talk and my kids, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling affirmed. My kids, they almost line up identically. We started with Narnia. We've gotten into Howard Pyle. I can't recommend him enough. His stuff on Robin Hood and King Arthur and the way it captures the imagination, it's almost second to none. And so you guys know, just to join him on the point about feeling inspired, I've felt absolutely inspired by his stuff. And I've had several book ideas for books that Mike can write while I take a nap.
I love
Tom, I agree with that so wholeheartedly. I love what you said about the reading component, but the thing you said right before that, and I'm just completely drawing a blank, but I think that's so critical to what you said. To homeschooling. I love it. That's great stuff.
And to feed to your point, Walter, it all flows out of the spiritual side. You mentioned having that spiritual connection, and like entering into the day in prayer, and God's providing the graces, and it's really all flowing out of that. And then you're having these connected kind of conversations throughout the day, and then you return to God at the end of the day, and you kind of give it back to him in prayer. So I love what you had to say about spirituality there.
Yeah, what I was going to say is you just reminded me, with your conversation with your 9-year-old boy, I had a similar conversation with I think he was 11 at the time, maybe 10, but it was almost a disaster. It was, I was listening, we listened to, I forget, I won't name the author, but it wasn't the author's fault. It was, we were listening to a CD, and it was, well, I'll only name it, Christopher West. It was one of his things on theology of the body, and it was great material, but I did a terrible job of facilitating it. And, it was just one of those things where I didn't have a really good, good answers, yes, but I think I took it too far. He was like, he was a little bit of a complete, like, what did Dad just tell me? So, you did a great. I need the pop check lifeline like you had. No, I needed that right then and there. But that's. But but now I'm ready for my second one, who's coming up, and he's probably ready for those questions too. So
yeah,
live and learn.
I appreciate you being so honest. I think it's like that for just about all of us because God bless our parents. They did so many good things for us. But I think for a lot of us, we didn't have any, so much of what we bring to the table when we're parenting is kind of what we got out of that direct child experience. And for a lot of us, that type of thing just wasn't addressed. So a lot of the time, I think all of us have those panic moments about whatever, where we're like, man, I feel like there's some place I've got to take my kid right now, and there's no roadmap. But I think the message of hope for all of us, I think, is that it's going to be sloppy for all of us, even. But there's a way to develop that roadmap and get there.
Amen. And we are going to pause briefly for a sponsor message, but I just want to say that as each father in his own way is working this out, and we can feel very outnumbered by the culture that at a certain point in our children's lives will have a strong voice in their ears and before their eyes. But this relationship with their fathers is so powerful, and I think we can trust that God does his best work when we're outnumbered. So fathers can stand Gideon-like before the enemy and really be there for their children. It's just so beautiful, and it takes so many different forms at different stages. All right, everybody, we're going to hear from our sponsor now just real quick, and we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Walter Crawford.
And I'm Maureen Whitman.
We are the co-founders of homeschoolconnections.com and proud sponsors of the Homeschooling Saints podcast,
which is here to help you homeschool more joyfully, more easily, and more effectively.
We want to thank you for listening.
And we invite you to check out our courses at homeschoolconnections.com.
And now, back to our program.
All right, we're back, and we've got Mike Aquilina, Walter Crawford, and Tom Weishaar. We're talking about Dad's special gifts. And I'd like to bring us around to just some of the fruits. What are you seeing? We'll start with Mike again. That's come about from your homeschooling journey as a father. Where are you seeing the fruits of your role?
Well, right now in our lives, I see the fruits in the children's lives. They're all adults now, every single one of them, and they're all doing well. It's funny, my kid who was most math resistant, just wanted nothing to do with it. He taught himself all the math that he needed to know in the month before he had to take the SATs. He's always been a contrarian kid, and I didn't appreciate that at all when he was growing up, but I appreciate it now because he's contrarian even in his field. And he got into the tech field, and one of his first big clients was in banking, and my wife and I were marveling that the guy who's designing software for these enormous international banks, wanted nothing to do with math. So I mean. that people are led to believe that if you don't do all the things that the public school is doing, for in the year that it's designed for, well, then your kid's going to just end up in a gutter somewhere. We found out it's not true. So, it's good to see them all thriving now. They're in very diverse fields. As I said, my oldest is a techie. He's part owner of a software company. He's been in business now for about a dozen years, maybe more. And my next child is married, mother of three, and I should say that Michael is married also. He's a father of three. My third just got married. She actually is a public school teacher. She's an art teacher. She's quite an accomplished artist too. The fourth is doing graduate school in Oxford now in the history of science. With no science, no parents who had any particular aptitude in science. So the kids kind of go their way, and they really do go after the skills that they'll need in order to pursue their interests. If we just kind of foster those things and say, hey, we're there to support you in this. Next child is a pastry chef. She went to culinary school. That's what she wanted to do, and she's managing the pastries for a big bakery in the city right now. And the youngest is the one who's just back from a religious order and trying to figure out what comes next in the great adventure. So for me, the rewarding thing now is to see them as adults, as responsible adults with families of their own, and with professions, pursuing their professions, and to see them all so different from each other and so different from their parents. I don't think any of them really took a path that their parents would take, but it's their own explorations that led them there.
It just sounds like each of them had a foundation of being lifelong learners, which we've touched on, but also of having the space to be discovering and be authentic and all of that, to have acceptance and encouragement. So beautiful and very powerful from the father. Yeah, thank you so much, Mike. What about you, Walter? What fruits are you seeing? And I will just asterisk that I had the pleasure of helping to teach writing to two of your older children, and they came into that writing process full of beans and ideas. So it was a lot of fun working with them. So what are you seeing now several years later?
Yeah. And you're a great teacher for them. So thank you for that. They are, so the oldest is at Hillsdale. She's a junior, and she absolutely loves it. And she's a journalism major, along with political science emphasis, I believe, political philosophy. Which is like the bread and butter of both what Hillsdale does, right? It's one of their kind of their missions, if you will, or what they're known for, maybe a better way of putting it. And she loves it, and she's looking to intern at a major conservative publication this particular upcoming summer. And she's actually, if you want to check her out, Beth Crawford, she is on the Collegian, so she writes for them. She has a number of articles, and she always calls me, Dad, my article got 75,000 views, and she's all excited about how many views she's getting and stuff. But that
is amazing.
She's an amazing person, and my son, my second oldest, is an honor student at Benedictine, and he's actually right now at the March for Life. Didn't expect the 19-hour bus ride. That kind of caught him off guard a little bit, but he's texting me at 2 a.m. last night about the condition of his computer. But he's doing really well. He's a very good writer, and like Mike said, both of them, they're very good writers. Actually, they're very good readers too. But they're taking different paths, right? She's more politically minded. He's more creatively minded. He wants to write creatively. And he's doing voice work for another podcast, as a matter of fact. So he was discovered as an MC in the church and reading scripture at church. And one of the podcast hosts heard his voice. Says, I need that voice. So if you hear his voice on the Catholic Gentleman podcast, that's his voice you're going to be hearing. And the other four, they're coming into their own, right? They're beginning to understand who they are and what their interests are. Our third oldest is very immersed in podcasts, so I can see her path going that direction in some way. And the other three, well, the jury's still out right now, but they're moving in the right direction, right? I think that's and I like what Mike said. Everyone's kind of taking their own path. And one thing I like about homeschooling is it's not fashion in any way, shape, or form. If you really try to just listen to the way the kids like what they like to do, and you kind of let them kind of nudge them. Sometimes it takes a nudging, but push them, encourage them going in a particular direction if that's where their talents lie, and see if they like it. And if they don't, then they'll back away and they'll try something else, that kind of thing. Well, I kind of see dads serving that role too. Kind of seeing a talent. And that goes back to what Mike said earlier about, being part of their lives, trying to doing things that they like to do. My wife's better at this than me, by the way. She'll tolerate listening to bad music more than I will, or reading a bad book than I will. But getting your pulse on that a little bit helps. Having great conversations, but also helps encourage, how to encourage them as they get into their adult years. So yeah, it's I think the biggest fruit is just giving them a chance to grow and thrive in the space that God plants them, and kind of help watering that spot, right? That's what we're doing. We're watering the spot that they happen to be planted in, and nurturing it as best we can.
So good. Thank you, Walter. Tom, what fruits are you seeing? I know they're little, but what are you seeing so far?
Well, I'll tell you, I know more about pirate songs and Little House on the Prairie than I ever thought I would in my life. First and foremost, Walter mentioned the tolerating the bad music, and God bless my wife. Sometimes in my household, the bad music is coming from me, and the children are joining in. She's a very patient, saintly lady. So, on a deeper level, first of all, intellectually, I think one fruit already that I've experienced is that my kids, just in general, have gotten the idea that learning is fun and engaging and exciting, and that they're passionate and into it in a way that I never was. But formationally, there are even other big things. There's the sense of a joy. When people talk to me about my children, they say they're joyful. They say they have great manners. They mention that they're well-formed. And one of the absolute biggest pieces of that is homeschooling. And it's been a big sacrifice for my wife and I to homeschool. And I cannot imagine not doing it. It is singular. Once you start doing it, there is nothing quite like it.
Thank you so much. Just to hear your joy in talking about it. We do see these early fruits, right? That those relationships draw out from their hearts and souls so much beauty, so much excitement. And just want to juxtapose that feedback from the outside world, Tom, with what you said about the family circus, and it can be complete bedlam at times, right? So not to sweat that's just one day or one moment, because the fruits are there and other people probably see them before you do, because they're a little different when they're outside. Right? When they're with other people, they're a little better behaved or whatever. They're safer with you, so they're probably a little wilder at times.
Will said, I've often had that reflection. The company comes over and the kids are just lined up and they're perfect and they're polite and everything. And then the next day it's bedlam again. And I'm thinking, how soon can we get more company over here? we need them a little less comfortable.
I love it. This is beautiful. All right,
hilarious.
Guys, in the interest of time, let's do a quick round robin of whatever it is that you'd like for the fathers listening at all different stages, and even some grandparents of their homeschooling journeys. What would you like to leave them with? And it can be a resource recommendation. It can just be a thought from the heart, anything that's coming to you. Mike, what would you like to end on?
moderate your expectations. I've always considered it one of the great advantages for me that I had such low expectations in life, because God has a plan that's nothing like yours, and he has a plan for each and every one of your children, and it's surprising. It's going to surprise you. All of my children have surprised me. Learn to be patient, learn to take a breath, try to moderate things like frustration, anger, go out, take a walk, think about it, pray, and calm down. Things are going fine. Probably. It's just that you didn't have a good night's sleep, or you had too much caffeine this morning, or whatever it is. But yeah, take a breath.
So
Learn to do that.
Yeah. Sorry. I was just going to say that fighting spirit of the father can sometimes overflow into family life in a way that needs to be checked, right? So just that self-awareness, as you're saying, Mike, it's so good, because that strength is beautiful. And we just want to always do our best, but forgive ourselves too. What are you thinking, Walter? What would you like to leave us with?
Golly, that thought gives me so many thoughts. But, I think that one of the things, especially for younger children, I like, we've employed a technique called what we call just because days. I think it's a phrase that was stolen from a podcast that we listened to. And I would provide it as a resource, but it escapes me now. But the idea of just because days for the younger ones. So let's say they've accomplished the work that maybe the target that the mom had in mind, or the dad that had in mind for that day or week or whatever, and give them some kind of incentive at the end. Whether maybe we go out for ice cream, or take a stroll in the park, or maybe you go to the museum, or the zoo, or something fun. Something that the kids can look forward to. Doesn't have to be, could go to the movies, whatever. I think those are really kind of wonderful opportunities for you to get to know the kids during the school day, and show how special homeschooling can be. Because there are going to be days that they're not special, right? There are going to be days when it's a little tougher than normal. When you're following a kind of a curriculum, and you do have kind of goals, and some parents do have that type of arrangement, right? And we're one of those where we don't have necessarily like an unschooling arrangement like Mike and his family has. But when you have like kind of these targets you're kind of shooting for, it can create challenges, right? It creates deadlines that are really kind of difficult, and especially when it comes to adolescence, right? The kids are entering their teen years. It can be very discouraging. Young men in particular have a real obstinance. They become lazy. Something happens when they hit around 12. They incredibly lazy. It's like, and that's okay. It's okay to recognize, and to what, they're going to be lazy no matter what, whether they're in a traditional setting or they're at homeschool. It's just the way it is. And recognizing that, and try to work with that, and not blow up at that, and try to figure out how do they want to handle it. It kind of work. It becomes kind of a mind share, a brain, an exercise in brainstorming, right? You try to figure out what the best approach would be for that individual. Then you start kind of creating a form of accountability, or that they agree to, right? Self-accountability sort of thing. So, I think that those are, I don't know if those are words of wisdom or not. That's more of a kind of a stream of conscious thought. But I would say that it is something that be prepared for if you're not already, and recognizing, by the way, it's not the end of the world either, as Mike pointed out. Our second oldest, the son who's now an honor student at Benedictine, was by far the most challenging, and began to question everything about homeschooling that we thought, all right, we needed to, lower our expectations, right? But here he is. He's only one of 25 students at Benedictine at a really wonderful Catholic university or college, and doing quite well, as a matter of fact. And so, lowering our expectations, recognizing their talents, try to appeal to those talents, try to motivate them in that space. I think that's where dads can be really pivotal in that effort, and try to and be there for the mom, right? I would say that be there for the mom, give her, we haven't really talked about that too much, but I would say that the mom needs a break more than the dad, right? That we get the benefit of working with adults all the time. They have employees that are willing to back talk them all the time. That's why those are our kids, by the way. Be there for the mom and give her a license to take breaks whenever she needs them. My wife has a night off every week. She leaves at around 4:00 and I don't see her until about midnight. And that's her prerogative. She gets a chance to do that. And so I think that's really important. And, for the dad to be supportive of the mom throughout the entire process. So.
Thank you, Walter. It's so good. Tom, what would you like to leave us with?
Yeah, and I've got two quick ones. The first one is toward Walter's point. I had a boss on a previous job. He has 12 kids, and he told me, so Tom, your boys are all going to hit a point somewhere in the ages between 11 and 13, where for nonstop for a year, they're going to think you're a complete idiot about everything. So be ready for that. But that's just a note to be ready that there are definitely those ups and downs toward what Walter is talking about. But I do have a resource to share. So I'll start with a very brief story on it. So one thing my wife and I have heard from both mothers and fathers who homeschool is that they have these conversations about what am I going to do when I'm done with my primary duty, homeschooling and parenting? What am I going to do to impact the church and change the world? And people talk about all these external things that they really want to do somewhere down the line. And that actually breaks my heart. And that breaks my wife's heart, because the real message is, no, it's not like you homeschool and you're a husband or a wife and you have children. And then you're doing outside things that are changing the world. The point is that your family is the domestic church and the first society. In that when you're renewing that family and having it do amazing things, that's what transforms the church, the society, the world. And toward that end, Greg and Lisa Popchak have founded the Catholic Home app. That's Catholic HOM. And this app is a community of people who are coming together, learning all the skills. We've talked even, it's come up in conversations, those times where you're not sure exactly what to do. It's a place to learn how to develop those skills to parent as the Catholic Church would have us parent, to support one another in that, and then move forward in a movement together. The Catholic Church's most important movement to change itself on its most fundamental level by renewing the family, starting with yours. So it's the Catholic Home app. That's Catholic HOM. We have a free version. We're doing for the paid version, there's a 2-month free trial, and many families are having their entire family start having all kinds of amazing transformations in as little as 2 weeks even. So I want to invite everybody out, Catholic Home, Catholic HOM. We'd love to have you there. Join the already thousands of families who are a part of the Catholic Church's most important movement.
Wow. Praise God. So
Amen.
Exciting to hear. All right, everybody, thank you so much. This has been just a fabulous conversation. Could have stayed another hour or two, but these are busy guys. Thanks for tuning in. We pray for you. Please pray for us too. Mike, Walter, Tom, just spectacular conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
All right, bye now. And that's our show for today. Our program is sponsored by homeschoolconnections.com. Be sure to subscribe to Homeschooling Saints and leave us an honest review. God bless you, and thank you for joining us.